All right, everybody, good evening. Just making sure, can everybody hear me all the way in the back? Sound coming through good? Wonderful. Everybody, thank you so much for being here tonight for our Drought and Demand Canyon Lake Water Management public meeting. My name is Nikki. I'm the Adult Services Coordinator here at the library. And just before we get things started, I wanted to remind everybody of a few things. Number one, if you need to step out for using the bathroom or getting a drink, we have our bathrooms just in the hall to the left. Do let people know if you're going for a bathroom break, though, because we do have where if you are leaving, we will admit some people who are in the hallways. And if people are in the hallways, they can come take a seat after. Otherwise, if you could double check your phones to make sure that any ringers or audio is off, just to not have any interruptions for the presentation itself. And with that, I'll be handing things over to Ryan Spencer, the Executive Director of the Comal County Conservation Alliance.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Awesome. Well, first off, my name's Ryan Spencer. I'm the Executive Director of Comal Conservation, and I'm ecstatic. I'm thrilled that so many of you are here today and concerned about our water, and just grateful that you took the time to be with us today. This program is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the Comal area, Comal Conservation, and the Preston Memorial Library. These three organizations are nonpartisan and work to provide information to residents of Comal County so they can make informed decisions. And again, we want to thank you for being here tonight. And we also want to thank our presenters for taking the time out of their busy days to be here. They're experts. They know this stuff better than anybody else, and I'm very grateful that y'all are here. Thank you. I've also got some other kudos that I want to make. I'm pretty good at making kudos, so that's why I'm doing this. I want to shout out to two very special people who were the real workers, the folks who put this thing on, and it's Roxana Dean and Jerry Chamberlain. If I can get a round of applause for those folks. Yeah. Roxana Dean is the board chair for Comal Conservation, but she also is a league member, and Jerry Chamberlain is, I believe, the league president. Incredible lady. I also want to thank Commissioner Crownover and Leacock for being here today. Thank y'all for taking the time to be here with your constituents. I want to thank Nikki with the library. There's Nikki. Nikki's amazing. Yeah, round of applause for Nikki, just hands down. Getting everybody in here, making the space available. I also want to thank Joyce and Ada for taking cards. They're going to be walking around during the event, so they're with the league. Raise your hands. As you have questions, you can raise your hand with your written question and provide it to them, and they'll bring it over here to Elizabeth, who will then give it to me. So that's something we should do. I also want to thank Joe for our sound. Awesome. And I also want to thank Owen for filming this today. So thank you all. And before we begin, I just want to remind that all of us are here for the same reason. We're here because we care about the place that we live in. So I want to remind us to be respectful, to be thoughtful of our neighbors, and of all the people that have taken the time to put this event together. So thank you for that. With that, we're going to start with our first presentation by Brett Mazie from Army Corps of Engineers.
Thank you. So let me first thank the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's presentation. And special thanks to all of you. You're the most important people here today. I'm the least important. All right? And so we're here to provide you with some good information and hopefully inform you so you can pass it on to your neighbors. I definitely want to thank the stakeholders and mission partners. Just quickly, Comal County Commissioners, CCS, WORD, GBRA, GBSA, LCYC, Suntex. We all work together to keep this lake going. Okay. Again, thanks for having me. As many of you know, I'm an Air Force veteran, 33 years, and then I now work for the Army. I'm an Army Corps civilian, and I'm assigned to the Army Corps of Engineers out here at Canyon Lake. Some things I want, this is just a little piece of information, and you might hear it again from GBRA, is we live in today, right? If you hear about someone developing something, it automatically upsets you, right? Because the lake levels are going down. We all up here, we work on 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, 50-year plans, okay? It's important that you get that knowledge so you understand what's happening in the future, right? Because that planning is not going to stop. All right, and they're going to keep on investing and using new technology and finding new water and new ways of doing things, okay? Today, the plans are already moving, Okay, so it's important that you understand how that works. I worked on a plan that was already within 50 years of development, and it still isn't finished today. Just some good information for you to look up. You know, Governor Abbott, he just did an investment plan for $1 billion for the next 10 years when it comes to water management. Another $15 million in the next 10 years for investment in science and research for water. So everyone's working in your best interest. So what I'm going to cover is the Army Corps of Engineers mission, the purpose of Canyon Lake Reservoir and Dam, and our roles and responsibilities. So first off, our mission is flood risk management, recreation, and environmental stewardship. And so what is the primary purpose of Canyon Lake? Number one, it's flood control, right? It was developed to stop flooding, and that's managed by the federal government, myself, and to provide drinking water, and that's managed at the state level. And I just want to, some concerns out there on social media, you know, what's causing the lake level to drop? Well, one, we're in a drought. Whether it's 5 years or 7 years, the water's just not coming into the lake at the rate we need it. Second is evaporation. So at any given time, we could lose 25 to 60% of the water volume per day from evaporation. And that adds up to about 6 feet a year. Okay, so last year we dropped about 10 feet. You can say 6 feet of that was evaporation. Legal, leased, and permitted water supply managed by GBRA, executed by TWC. Illegal removal of water by persons who have shoreline access. And then natural leaching of the water, which is water seeping through the lake and dispersing itself. Keep in mind, the water coming into the lake, the water in the lake, and the water leaving the lake is managed by the state of Texas, not the Army Corps of Engineers. Here's just some examples of flood control. In 1936, we were authorized to, Army Corps of Engineers was authorized to start building the dams and reservoirs for this purpose. Canyon Lake's up there. Forgot the other one. Fort Worth, Texas, huge floods. Does anyone know what the population of Canyon Lake was in 1980? 100. So what this slide represents is just that construction began in 1958 of the dam, and we started bringing in water in 1964, and it was fully filled up in 1968. You might hear today acre feet. So a normal pool, which is 909, that's what we try to keep it at, we usually have about 379,000 acre feet of water, okay? And later on today, you'll hear from G. Barry, who will explain how much of that is leased out. So this slide illustrates what's called the pool levels. And so right here in the green, the conservation pool, that's managed by GBRA. So I have my gates that I operate, and they have their gates. When we're in that zone, conservation pool, which is under 909, they're operating the gates. So my gates are wide open, and then they control the water flow with their gates. GBRA. Sorry about that. It says it right here. Once it goes above 909, that's where we take control of it, and we try to keep it evenly between 909 and 911. Okay. Well, this is my favorite slide. Let's see if I have my mouse here. So this is a historical chart of the different periods of when it's rained or flood over the time it was built. If you notice right here, this red line, or red arrow, I mean, this is our current level of the lake. And it shot up to 910 in less than a year. Okay? So when you hear people saying the lake's over, it's dead, it's gone, it'll never fill back up, there's evidence that it took less than a year to fill up from the current level we're at right now. Each one of these periods up here which is about every 10 years we have a significant water event, such as a flood. All those events, which is over 10, can fill the lake back up. How many remember 2002? Right here in the yellow line. That event filled the lake up itself twice during that period of time. Okay, and we released, I think, eight days worth of water over our spillway. Okay. So I just wanted to show you that you don't need hope. It's going to happen. Mother Nature will turn around, and the drought will be over, and it will rain, and we can fill the lake up pretty quick. So part of our mission is environmental stewardship. And this is kind of what we're focusing, for when it comes to Army Corps of Engineers, it's what we're focusing on during this drought. And that's making sure our parks and leases are up to date, educating and enforcing Title 36, and working with our stakeholders on agreements. So what we're doing is, at all our parks, we have weekly water meter checks to make sure no water is being wasted, and that if we have any leaks in the lines, which we always do, that they're out there and repaired. Annual inspection of our lease areas, so you name it. Word leases from us, GBRA leases some areas. We got JBSA, Suntex, the different marinas. They're inspected annually. And a little more frequently if the county has something that they have to inspect. Educating and enforcing Title 36. These are all recent photos of, and Title 36 is basically the laws that govern the public property, what you can and can't do. So you're not allowed to drive personal motor vehicles on the shoreline. You can't build roads because your neighborhood wants a walking path. You can't build on Corps property or even in flowage easement without a permit. You can't pull out water illegally. That's what you see here. Someone's got a PVC line in the water. This is Corps property where they brought in their own sand and then put in their own chairs. You can't land on the lake. That was that was 2 months ago. Someone was more embarrassed than me. And you can't moor your boat. You can moor your boat on the shoreline as long as you're in the area, but you can't leave it unattended and you can't leave it overnight. And those are things that we see quite frequently. Here's our awesome mission partners, our stakeholders, always working together. These are just the last month. Word has had several cleaning events. Keep Canyon Lake beautiful. And then we had some private public citizens that threw a huge cleanup over at the different marinas. In total, there's over 15 roll-off dumpsters that were filled to max, over 500 cubic feet of garbage. We're going to continue to do that for as long as we can. Just keep picking it up off the shoreline, especially now that more of the shoreline's exposed. But these are just all people volunteering their hours to help keep Canyon Lake beautiful. Over 700 tires have been recycled. These tires aren't from people throwing them. Some people have thrown tires in the lake, but back in the day, the Army Corps of Engineers used tires to prevent erosion or fish habitat. Good idea at the time, but not today. And make sure I covered everything. And some people have some questions, about building on Corps property. What you do is you take away conservation storage. So all the people on the lake that have built stuff in flowage easement or down on the Corps property, that's taking water away from you, right? Because if you pour concrete in, the water goes away, okay? So that's why we try to prevent that. We lose loss of flood storage. So if someone builds a garage in flowage easement without permission and it floods, then that water gets pushed over to the neighbor's property, okay, and causes damage. It causes shoreline erosion, causes safety problems, and all of the trash ends up somewhere on the lake other than the person's property where it left. That's another big problem. And that is the end of my presentation.
All right, we're switching out slides at the moment. We're going to take questions at the end, so hold those. And again, if you have questions, burning thoughts, write them on those cards, and Ada and Joyce will grab them from you and make sure they get brought up here. Up next, we're going to have Nathan Pence with the GBRA.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Good to see some familiar faces and a few friends out there, and nice to meet a few new ones. My name is Nathan Pence. I'm the Executive Manager of Environmental Science for the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority, and I would go through the long list that Brett did about thank you to everyone, but I don't think we'll all take 5 or 10 minutes at the start of our talk to do that. We've got some other things to talk, but please know I appreciate everything everyone has done to get us here and give us the opportunity to get some factual information out to the community about what's going on. The one thank you I do want to say, though, is I want to thank all of y'all for coming. The fact that there's interest, the fact that citizens want to be involved and want to learn, I think that's a good thing. You're here. We can give you some information. You can ask questions and get any clarification. But then consider yourself an ambassador or a liaison that's going to go out and speak to the rest of the community and make sure the factual information is getting out. So really appreciate y'all being here and giving us a chance and an opportunity to present some of this. I mentioned to y'all earlier that my name was Nathan Pence, but that's just a name. I thought I would tell y'all a little bit about myself to give you a little confidence or comfort with me standing up here at this podium and talking to our community, because I do believe it's our community. I live here. My son goes to school here. I love the river. I love to recreate on Canyon Lake. I've been known to water ski. You can find me on a Saturday in an inner tube. I like to think of myself as part of this community. I've lived here a long time, and it's very important to me. But I'm not only a member of the community, I've been lucky enough to make my passion my career. Since college, I've worked on Comal Springs and San Marcos Springs. I've worked on the endangered species that are involved with the Edwards Aquifer and the 2 spring complexes. I did a decade with the city of New Braunfels working on their rivers, on tourism and environmental stewardship from the city's side and perspective. Gave me a chance to work with all the outfitters. I appreciate what water means to the economics of this community. I feel for a few that are going through a tough time right now. I personally understand it and get it. And now I work for the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority, where I'm still having the opportunity to work in the Guadalupe River and the Guadalupe Basin, Canyon Lake, Comal Springs. But now I get to do it all the way from Kerr County down to Calhoun County on the coast, headwaters to the coast, if you will, springs to the tides. And I really enjoy it, and I take it seriously, and I'm very passionate about it. So I start by telling that so that y'all all know my heart is in the same place y'all's is. I want the best for our community. The best can be defined a lot of different ways by a lot of people, admittedly. But I think we're all here because we have the same interest, and we want to see some of the same things, and we want to spread some of the same factual information. So just thought I'd share that as I get rolling. This evening, I'm going to talk a little bit about GBRA, who we are, what we do. Then I'm going to talk about Canyon Lake and the operation of Canyon Lake and how we manage the water in Canyon Lake and what governs or rules or regulates that. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the drought that we're in. I don't see how you could talk about Canyon Lake in our community right now without talking about the drought that goes hand in hand with it. And so I've got some factual information, simply some statistics and stuff like that I think everybody will find interesting when it comes to the drought. So Guadalupe Blanco River Authority, we were first created in 1933 as a water conservation and reclamation district. We were reauthorized by the Texas legislature in 1935, and we took the name that you know us by now as the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority. We have a long enabling act and legislation, as you could imagine, those documents are. But if you want to break it down to some of the simpler points, there's 3 things that I would point out that really fit our mission as GBRA. First, we're here to provide services to the citizens of this area and to the Guadalupe River Basin, which largely are water and wastewater services. Our water can either be raw water, so think of river water straight out of a pipe, or you could think about treated water that goes through a water treatment plant first, makes that water potable, clean, and safe, and then is served to go directly into a household that's ready for use. Wastewater treatment. We absolutely run wastewater treatment facilities and plants around this local area and other places within the basin. We take that job very seriously. We take pride in treating that water to the standards of our permits and above the standards of our permits. High quality effluent can be a resource and a value for our community if used in the right way, either for quantity like during drought right now, or for environmental flows, or reuse for golf courses and parks and cooling towers for industry and stuff like that. Dear to my heart, I mentioned I'm the executive manager of environmental science, so I don't design those types of plants. I don't run those types of plants. I'm more on the stewardship and the conservation side. So these next two bullets, one of our charges as GBRA is watershed protection, and then the other one is education and conservation opportunities. And so we run a water quality lab. My staff conducts research. We are the agent for TCEQ that does the Clean Rivers program, so we monitor for water quality at over 100 sites in the Guadalupe River Basin. Also, endangered species is something that falls under my group, and GBRA does work on that as it pertains to our permitting through the federal government and the state government to be able to serve our customers and our constituents within the basin. Education, recreation, we have that stuff too. Those of you that are, well, I probably all of us are from the local area, but if you're from really local right here, you'll know right across the street is the Canyon Lake Gorge that the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority operates. I had the privilege of managing that facility for about 5 years. Great place, it's grown. We teach a lot of kiddos about the things we're talking about tonight and helping bring them up in an awareness and a mindset so that they can be the next generation that takes care of our resources as we grow. One thing I wanted to make sure and throw out there while I'm talking about GBRA ourselves, we do not collect taxes. We do not get any state fees or state funding. So everything that we do is derived from the fees for the services that we provide. So the water contracts that we have, the wastewater plants that we operate, we have some admission fees and stuff like that to some of our facilities. But often when I talk to individuals, they, well, why don't you use the tax money for this? Or when are y'all going to get extra state funding to do something else? And so just wanted to let everyone know right up front, we do not receive any funding from the state or any taxes in any way for anything that we do. I think I talked about most of this already, and so I don't want to belabor it, but just a couple of statistics. We operate 5 different water plants. We have 13 different wastewater treatment facilities. We have 3 major parks that we operate for recreation. One thing I didn't mention is hydropower, so hydroelectric generation for electricity. GBRA does operate and or own several different hydroelectric facilities. Some folks do not know it, but Canyon Lake Dam itself is a hydroelectric dam, so we have the ability to generate when there's water to release at a sufficient flow amount. And then we also have our GV lakes that run down through the middle of the basin. GBRA's statutory district, we're the 10 counties that run from Kendall all the way down to Calhoun. We are not jurisdictionally over Kerr County at the very top. The UGRA, Upper Guadalupe River Authority, is actually the jurisdictional river authority for that area. We work very close with them, collaborate with them, talk with them, but they are the ones that have jurisdiction in that area. So just a little layout of our district. It's very large. Again, I'm privileged to get to work with the river all the way up and down that entire district. So I want to talk a little bit about Canyon Lake and our operations of Canyon Lake and some of the stuff that we do there and how we determine water releases and things of that nature. So beautiful picture here. You can kind of relate this picture to the next one. I don't want to go through all of this because Brett did a fairly good job of talking about some of the history of Canyon Lake and when it was constructed and things of that nature. But I thought a crowd like this that lives here might take interest in seeing this historic photo of the lake when it was under construction and before it was filled. You can see a couple of cars down in that picture plus roads. It kind of gives you that perspective of how large the dam actually is and how big the reservoir actually was. The one thing on this slide, though, that I will reiterate that Brett mentioned already previously once was the authorized purposes by Congress when the reservoir was authorized, which was flood control and water conservation. Water conservation for us essentially equals water supply is what that means. So when Congress authorized the building of Canyon Dam, those were the two purposes. I will just go ahead and point out it's kind of coming out of it, and we've mentioned it a couple times, but recreation is not one of those authorized uses. There is a great partnership that goes there. Several of us work very close with the recreational interests. I told you once before, I love to ski, I love to boat, I love to tube, and I've left out fishing. That's probably the one that I enjoy more than any of the other three. But it's not an authorized purpose by Congress. And so that does dictate how the lake is used and how the water within the reservoir is used. I think this probably goes without saying, but let me just go ahead and put it out there. Guadalupe Blanco River Authority, we are not a retail provider of water or wastewater services. We are a wholesaler. So we sell water or contract water to entities like New Braunfels Utilities or Texas Water Company that is here today, and we'll speak in a little while about their role within our community. So we don't deliver, in most cases, potable, drinkable, safe water to someone's doorstep. We provide it to another entity that then takes that role of the middleman between us and the actual end user. Out of Canyon Lake, GBRA has 90,000 acre-feet annually of water supply that we're authorized to use by TCEQ. We have permits from TCEQ that tell us how much water can be used annually, what the purpose of that use is that it can be used for, what the location of that water can be used for. It sets up the seniority or the junior priority date for how that water is used. Where I'm really going with those details and what I'm driving home is we have permits from TCEQ that tell us how we use the water in Canyon Lake. That's very important. We don't get to decide. We don't get to make that up. I think to kind of drive that message home a little bit, living here in the community, it depends on what side of the dam that someone lives on as to what is passionate to them and what they want to see accomplished. Give you a great example. If I'm at HEB down in New Braunfels, people are asking me, GBRA, why don't you open that dam up and let more water out? We need water for the Guadalupe River in town. We want recreation to be able to float. And I even hear this, I've got a family reunion coming and I've got a place rented on the river at a B&B, and we'll make sure and swim. And I tell those individuals, GBRA does not get to make those decisions. We have permits from TCEQ that dictate how and when we use that water. We don't sit around in some room at GBRA drawing straws, rolling dice, talking about areas, and then deciding how much water goes where. That's not how it works. On the flip side, I talked to some folks up here from the lake, around the gorge, see people up here at Jay and Diane's and getting a hamburger or whatever it might be, and I get asked the question, why don't y'all shut the lake? Don't let any more water out. It's our water up here and it belongs to us. And I get that perspective, but my answer is the same to that individual as the one that wants it opened up. We don't have the ability to make those decisions. We have contracts, we have TCEQ permits, we're regulated into how we operate that lake. And we have to stick to it very, very closely. It's a schedule, there's planning that goes behind it. And so just wanted to make sure everyone knew we have things that we follow. We don't sit around and make those kinds of decisions on the fly. Also wanted to make sure and mention to everyone here, there is no new water being contracted or sold out of Canyon Lake. For the last 2 decades, all of the water in Canyon has been fully contracted to other retail providers who then serve the populations in and around the reservoir. We've got about 30 different entities, municipalities, water districts, communities, they're defined differently, that Canyon Lake serves through GBRA selling water to or contracting water to other entities. So we work with those retailers to get the water to somebody's doorstep. And we're not taking on any new retail customers from Canyon Lake. It's been set for 2 decades. And I think that's important to say, because I know I've been asked several times, man, with the lake going lower, why are y'all selling more water out of the lake? And it's easily said, we're not. That's not what is happening. Brett talked about this just a little bit, and I'll take it one step further and just expand on it a little bit. But GBRA and the Army Corps of Engineers, we're partners in Canyon Lake in the way that it operates. We have regular conversations. We collaborate when there's maintenance that has to be done. We talk about how to accomplish that between the 2 different entities with schedules for water delivery and rains or lack thereof, whatever it may be. And there's this magical marker on the lake at 909 mean sea level. So Brett mentioned it earlier. 909 is what's known as conservation pool or full. The reservoir can take more above that as flood storage, and then what's below 909 is water supply to help get us through times of dry or drought, or when water's not falling from the sky and you otherwise wouldn't have it. So above 909, when it's in flood pool, that is absolutely the Corps of Engineers' job to manage that water, and generally they evacuate that water as quick as they can so that there's room for the next flood or the next rain so that that water can be stored again without flooding communities downstream. When it's under 909, GBRA is operating it at that point and making releases either through our hydroelectric dam to generate electricity and provide water for contracts downstream, or we can bypass the hydro outlets if there's not enough flow to actually spin the turbines. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're just releasing water for downstream customers and contracts that we have. A little bit of the nuts and bolts for how we actually make those decisions and what's regulated to us and the regime that we go through, if you will. It's important to note that it's very different of whether it's drought time or whether it's non-drought. And so I'm going to talk about non-drought first. So think of lakes probably full. We've had ample rainfall, at least normal rainfall, that sort of an idea. When the lake is full and we're in non-drought conditions, there's 4 different things that GBRA looks to make the decision for how much water is released into the river downstream. There's FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulation Commission. There's Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ. GRTU is the Guadalupe River Trout Unlimited. And then water supply contracts for communities and customers that are downstream of the reservoir. FERC, that has to do with running the hydroelectric turbines, generating electricity. FERC will also have some environmental considerations in it very often. TCEQ is based on water supply and the permits downstream and how much water is needed downstream. TCEQ will also have some environmental conditions in their permits very often that we have to follow. Guadalupe River Trout Unlimited, great community partner, provides recreation, provides opportunity around here. We have a deal with Guadalupe River Trout Unlimited to help protect the trout and keep the trout alive during warmer and drier times. But I do want to say the lake has to be full for those conditions to kick in. People before trout, and in this condition when it's dry, those criteria do not kick in. And then the last one is water supply. So when we're in a time of non-drought, which is not what we're in right now, we look across this chart, and this is a very simplified version of it. There's more that goes with it. But then whichever is the greater of those managing doctrines or regulations, we release the greater of those. So very often our TCEQ and FERC permits are what we're going by during non-drought, unless we were full, and then often it's the Guadalupe River Trout Unlimited that helps guide how much water we release out of the dam. So that was non-drought. But right now we're obviously in a dry time, a drought time. So let me go ahead and define that per the permits and the way that we look at that. It's 45 consecutive days below 90 CFS of inflow at the Spring Branch gauge. This morning I looked at all the gauges getting ready for today. Spring Branch is flowing at 12.4 CFS today. If it's made it back up above 90 CFS. I can't remember when, maybe one of the rain events here recently, but the lake has not come back up to full. We will stay in drought condition as far as the releases and how we manage the reservoir goes until we get back up to 909 at the conservation pool. So during drought time, it's either the inflow or our water supply contracts that dictate how much water is released out of the reservoir. We have to at least match inflow up to 90 CFS. So right now, inflow is 12.4 CFS. Without water contracts, we would be releasing 12.4 CFS today. But we have downstream obligations for customers, and so the release out of the dam today was around 60 CFS. And that 60 CFS is intended to serve the communities and the customers below Canyon Lake further down on the river. And so most of the times in drought condition, our water supply contracts are what's going to drive the amount of water that's released from Canyon Dam. A couple of interesting things I thought I would mention, and again, this kind of comes back to which side of the dam you are on, but they're factual things, so people can have the opinion about them that y'all would like to. But during 2023, there was 134 days with zero flow into Canyon Lake. That set a record for all time. Again, 134 days, I think it was. Had the lake not been there, the river would have been dry all the way down to where Comal Springs comes into the Guadalupe, where the Comal joins with the Guadalupe. So the river would have been dry through New Braunfels during that period of time. There was no flow. 2022, I think, had around 80 days. I don't remember what 2024 was off the top of my head, but my point being, we are in definite drought conditions, and the reservoir has provided, like it's supposed to, water supply for the surrounding communities, and the reason that it was built. Okay, I got a few more slides on drought, and then I'll be done. So, talking about Canyon Lake in this area, there's no way you can talk about that right now without talking about drought. And the picture that I have up here, the graphic that I have up here, is of the entire Guadalupe River Basin. We want to talk about this area specifically, but I think it's good to keep the perspective and keep in mind what is going on through all of Central Texas and the Guadalupe River Basin. So real quick, I'll just point out, up here at the very top, around the Hunt area, we have a gauge. The median flow this time of year should be about 43 CFS, and we're flowing at 10 CFS up there. That's about a fourth of the median as to what's supposed to be there. It's hard to see, and I'm probably in front of it for some of you, but all the way down here on the coast at Tivoli, that is the lowest gauge that we have on the Guadalupe River. Right now, the median flow should be around 1,600 CFS, and it's flowing about 400 CFS. Again, that's about a fourth of what it's supposed to be. There are some exceptions to that as you go through the basin, some higher, some lower, but I hope the message that's driving home is the issue we're talking about here right now with Canyon Lake, it's not unique to us in our community. The whole river basin is experiencing drought right now and having conversations about how is their community going to make it, what does it do to their economics, and how much longer can we do this. So we're not the only ones right now going through this. It's more dear to my heart because I live here, and it's more dear to y'all's heart because y'all live here, but we're not the only ones, and I wanted to make sure and put that in perspective. This kind of conversation is going on in several communities in several places. Driving the message home to talk about our local area right here. This is the drought forecast that's put out by NOAA. And you'll notice right here in the middle, there's this kidney bean of exceptional drought. The blue outlines the watershed for the Guadalupe River. This area that's in exceptional drought right here at the top, that's the watershed of Canyon Lake. And so when you talk about a drought for Canyon Lake, you don't talk about the water that actually falls on the reservoir. That is not what fills the lake. It's the water that falls on the watershed above the lake where you catch it and you have runoff, and then the river flows to the reservoir where you actually fill the reservoir or you catch extra water to catch up after you've had dry time. So no other way to say it. This kidney bean right here could not be in a worse place for all of us right here in this community. And we're seeing it in the drought that's manifesting and some of the conditions that we see at Canyon Lake. So when I'm talking about this upper watershed, we measure that and we talk about that as far as inflow to the reservoir. If you get a lot of rain upstream, you're going to have a good inflow. If you get rain below the lake, doesn't matter, or on the lake for that matter, doesn't really matter to Canyon. You got to get that water up and above. So the graph that's up here on the screen is the spring branch gauge from 1923 to current time. So that gauge has been running before the reservoir was built. And the orange bars are the amount of flow that you would have seen, or you did see at Spring Branch during those different years. And so, much like Brett talked about, look at these big events right here. They were reservoir fillers, for a lack of a better term. But look at some of these other years, like during the drought of record during the 50s, hardly any water flowed into Canyon Lake. If we come over here to the far right of the graph right now, you're going to see we have years where I was talking about we set records of 134 days of no inflow to Canyon Reservoir. You can clearly see that on the graph that we have that setting up there. The light blue line is the average flow that we should see as an inflow over the years to Canyon, which is around 250,000 250,000 acre feet in a given year. And as you can see, we're nowhere close to that right now. When we talk about a drought, I want to stay away from using the words historic, drought of record, precedent setting, anything else that you might use, because you don't know what a drought's really going to be until you come out of it. Then you can define it. The number of years, the severity. Do you want to base it on rainfall? Do you base it on recharge and inflow? There's lots of ways to define drought. So I want to stay away from that right now. But you can clearly look at some of the statistics and understand we are in a real drought right now, and we won't know just how bad it is until we come out the other side of it. We typically have around 250,000 acre feet on average of inflow to Canyon Lake in a given year, 1 year. And right now, the last 5 years combined has only been 220,000 acre feet over those 5 years combined. So what should have been 1,250,000 acre feet is 220,000 acre feet. That's the deficit. That's what we're seeing at Canyon Lake right now in the low water levels, is the drought that we're all dealing with right now. 3 of the last 5 years have set records and are in the top 10 for the lowest inflow to Canyon Lake ever, with 2023 being second only to 1956, which was the worst year of the drought of record. One thing to make sure and mention about drought, you can have one really, really wet year surrounded by 2 years of drought on each side, and you're still in a drought even though you had one really wet year. Or you could flip that and have 4 wet years with a dry year in the middle. You're still probably doing okay. You're in wet years because you've had those 2 on either side of it. So when we talk about drought and we talk about Canyon Lake, looking at rolling averages of several years put together is a really good indicator of where we're at in that index and where we're at for drought. And so I want to point out, this was the drought of the 50s. And over the 5 years of the drought of the 50s right here, we had average inflow of about 63,000 acre feet over those 5 years. So average them together, and that's what we were getting annually. Over here for the last 5 years, 2019 through 2024, our average of those 5 years, that rolling average is 44,000 acre feet. So drought of record, where we're currently sitting, you can see we're getting less inflow to Canyon Lake than we would have then because the reservoir had not been built yet during the 50s. So just kind of trying to drive home that message. It is very dry right now. We are in a drought. One of the good things I can tell y'all, though, and you can look at it as glass half full or you can look at it as glass half empty. And I'm definitely choosing to look at it as glass half full, and I believe this. We are doing much, much better with Canyon Reservoir than some of the other communities and some of the other reservoirs are doing with their levels and how resilient or not they are. I propose to you that Canyon Lake is doing its job exactly as it was designed. It is resilient. We are 5 years into a drought, how bad to be seen, and we're still at 47% or roughly half full in our reservoir. That is a very good thing. That bodes well for all of us here in this community, and it shows that Canyon Lake's doing what it's supposed to. Think about some of the other reservoirs, and I can't help but bring up like Medina or something like that. They're, I think, 2% right now full is what I saw. Thank goodness we're not in the same position that community is, and that some of those businesses around that reservoir are in. We're doing much better than that. So I'm closing out here. Look into the future, what's to come. I think factually said, if we don't get rain and we don't get lots of rain, then what we're going to continue to see is some of the same trend. The reservoir is being used as water supply. There is evaporation, and the level will continue to go down if we don't see rain, and there's no way around that fact. We are doing some things to try and push that out as far as possible. So within your local retailers, NBU, Texas Water Company, you're seeing them implement stage reductions that reduces water use and promotes conservation within the local community. GBRA, we're no different. We're in stage 4 for our canyon wholesalers, which means it's an automatic 15% reduction off the contracted amount, and that's mandatory. And unusual to wholesale water providers, we have also put a provision in there that says you can't allow lawn watering more than once a week. That's typically left up to the retail provider, but our management and our board felt strongly enough about that they actually wrote it into our drought contingency plan as well as a wholesaler. So it's a little different, but I think it shows how serious we're taking it and how we want to see the resource extended and prolonged. We don't know how long this drought would continue or how long it would go on. Should mention, we do have more severe stages that we can go into as time goes on if the reservoir continues to drop, and our board will take that action when the time is right. The last thing on this graph that I thought I would point out to everybody, so this yellow line right here, this is where we're at in April of 2025. The green line is essentially average. So if we got average rainfall, average conditions, 50th percent, we essentially go into a neutral holding pattern a little bit, which hopefully drives home that message. We've got to have more rain than just an average rainfall for the reservoir to fill up. Now, it's happened in history. Someone asked earlier, were you here in 02? Well, I was working that day during 02, and man, what a day, what a week, what a month that became. So it's going to happen again. The question is when and the timing of it, but it's coming again. If we maintain the same trajectory that we're on, this red line is the exceptional drought, like what I talked about a little bit earlier, and I didn't make any qualms about it. The lake is going to continue to fall in level without significant rainfall. That's what it was designed to do, so that we can provide water to all of us that use it in the communities that surround. And then, as you can tell, something above would be greater, and there's all sorts of different scenarios that you can run in that. So what are we doing for the future? We do need more water in this area. There is no doubt about that. And so GBRA, we are looking to those next projects to develop the next sources. Canyon's fully allocated. It's been allocated for 2 decades. There's no new water coming from that. We've got some groundwater projects going on, as in the Carrizo Aquifer. We've partnered with Alliance to help make that more cost efficient and move water around. The next one we're talking about is the project we're calling Water Secure, which would actually bring some water up from the coast, use some ground and brackish water too, plus another set of permits that we have in the middle of the basin for the Guadalupe River. Combining all of those together is how you can get efficiency and scale of cost and move the water to where it's needed by the communities that need them. And so this project is probably a 10 or 15-year project in the build before water can even be delivered. Brett mentioned the planning cycle, and I think that is very important to mention. Region L is the planning group that works for this area for our local regional. They work on a 50-year cycle, and they produce that plan every 5 years. So Canyon Lake, long time ago, looking forward in the new Region L plans, these are the sorts of projects that you're going to see in them. as communities prepare for that next generation, those next decades to come. And we're not the only one. There's many examples of these sorts of projects in the regional water planning documents. And I end on this slide to ask for questions, but those of you who recognize this picture will remember that day. That's 2002. That's the water going over the spillway. That created the gorge that we're all very fond of and holds a dear spot in my heart. But point being, it's going to happen again. Brett showed us those spikes. You saw it in a couple of my graphs. The question is when, but it will rain again. So thank you.
All right, we're going to do a little bit of switching out. We are going to save questions to the end, so if you do have questions for Nathan, please fill out your cards and hand them to Ada or Joyce, and they'll get them up here. I also want to take a moment to get a heck yeah and some applause for the rain that occurred while we were here. That was wicked, and I can't help but think that it might be because y'all are all here, so I'm grateful for that. Our next presenter is Andrea Williams. She is the president of the Texas Water Company, and we are just very grateful that she is here.
Thank you very much. I wish I could say that I cued the rain, but as my luck goes, usually whenever I show up, it doesn't seem to come. So I was thrilled to see that. I agree. It is fantastic to see this many folks interested. The one group that I want to make sure that I say thank you to, in addition to all the folks that are here and that organize this, is if you're a Texas Water customer, thank you for being a customer, and thank you for the passion that you have about this topic and about the water that you're provided. So, one of the things, the reason we have these words up here, the embracing conservation. So I'd ask you to look at that, to think about living that. We'll talk some about drought stages, et cetera. To ask you to lean in with us and not try and figure out what we're doing with the smart meter, or how you can outsmart your smart meter to irrigate, but instead work with us here, because this is such a vital resource to us all. A little bit about who we are. I know you really want to get to the other slide. So as a native Texan, and I hate to admit, geography was not my best subject, but one thing here, just like you've heard right there, I know exactly what counties I operate in, because unfortunately it's those, you called them kidney bean, I think, but nevertheless it's the same. The one time you don't want to be extreme something is drought, yet we are. So we serve approximately 78,000 customers. That's almost exclusively all of you in Comal County. We do have some other customers in Kendall County and a small group from some acquisitions in other counties. But this is our county. This is where we're at. So we are, just like you've heard, we are all in this together. Let me see. Okay, so just a little bit about who we work with. And I hope you notice that the words at the top that are most important are all of you. I normally walk around, but I know you won't be able to hear me, so sorry if it seems like I'm fidgeting here. But there's a variety of other entities that we work with. Don't worry, we're going to talk about that development community one there. I got it. I have a whole slide on it. Groundwater conservation districts, wholesale providers like GBRA. We also have a couple of regulatory bodies. So for us, the Public Utility Commission of Texas is a primary regulatory body that we work with, as is the TCEQ, who primarily focuses on water quality for us. So this is by no means exhaustive, but just wanted to show also we work with our county commissioners and with a number of other folks that are interested in what we do here, and the privilege to serve all of you. So what we offer. I wish I could say water all the time, but you've heard a lot. But that is our priority, which is why we've taken some of the actions that we have. The number one thing that we offer, that we have a responsibility to, is to deliver you reliable, quality water. That's it. It can be complicated, but at its root, that's really what it is, and that's our obligation. And our activities, everything that follows that, is focused exclusively on that. Yes, we have to monitor and report our water quality. I'll show you a bit on how we monitor our supply, what we talk about there. But the focus is that reliable quality water. And as you've heard with the drought, that's becoming a bit more of a challenge. But but I really do believe if we continue to lean in together, focus on conservation, there's a couple of ways we can address supply. Then when that event happens, we'll be ready. But until then, we're gonna continue to have a resilient system. Okay, this, and I appreciate, so at its purest form, hopefully this is helpful for y'all. This image seems to be worth a lot of words. So I realized that we were previously named Canyon Lake. So with that name came confusion that we owned all the water in the lake. You have heard that we do not. So where does our water come from? Really? There's only two places that water can come from. It's the sky and it's the ground. And so if it's not raining, it's not coming from surface water. Unfortunately, actually, if it's not raining, it's not really coming from groundwater either. So that's a challenge. But for us, a little over half of our water supply comes from surface water. That's exactly what you think it is. That's Canyon Lake. Then about 36% groundwater. Those are the wells. We have approximately 40 wells that, as a result of the drought, are performing at varying degrees of degradation because without the water making its way into the ground, there's just not as much there. We also have about 12% that comes from our wholesale provider, GBRA, so that is our water mix. I appreciate that you said it. There is not more water that is coming out of the lake that is allocated to us. What we've been allocated is what we've been allocated is what we've been allocated. I'll explain perhaps what I think some of the confusion about some of the activities that we've done. I think I can shed some light on that, so hopefully that's helpful. But it really is these three buckets. That's where the water comes from. I have a new slide. I was afraid that they were going to have stolen one of my images, but they didn't. So this to me is one of the most admittedly sobering slides, and credit to the Drought Monitor for this slide. But if you look, and I know it's a little bit hard to see, but that very top line, essentially percent full, is what we're doing here, and then months across here. 2011 is the top line, essentially full. What I'd like for you to note is, look, so from 100% full to 80% full, that's from 11 to 23. Maybe, okay, depending on how you feel about it. Look at the difference between 23 and 24. In 1 year's time, the same amount, essentially, that it dropped in more than 10 years' time. And then just already, so you see 24, 25. I mean, the truth is, I'm going to have to change this chart to make it go below 40 at the trajectory that we're on. This really does sort of show to me exactly how much, with respect to time, the significant change in the lake that there's been. Okay, so don't worry, I'm not going to talk about all of this, but some of this is the same. Again, there's three places that our water comes from: surface water, groundwater, purchased water. I want to focus on this side here. So this is a report that we create internally, and the top line, you probably can't see it, and so I apologize, that's max capacity. That's the absolute max amount that we can provide. And then you see this blue line right there? See, sorry, I'm a pointer. That's 23. Do you see that there? That's June. Sorry, that's why I have to not move. I'm sorry. That's the July of 23 is the blue line. That is dangerously close to the max amount that we could provide. So why does this matter? If you compare that blue line to the yellow line, July of 24, the difference, what happened there? It didn't rain. I became very unpopular. I declared stage 4 drought in this county. This is why, because you guys responded, and it matters. Look at the difference there. That's what that is. To the day. I know we're going to talk about stage 4, but this is one of the single biggest ways that, since we cannot make it rain, that we can continue to save our water supply. I find that so impressive and is a testament to all of you and what you've done. I know. Now, because what you would have liked to have done is gone out, and then you get tired of not being able to water. I get tired of you not being able to water too, is the truth. However, until something else changes, this is the situation that we're in. I do not enjoy seeing your grass not grow or be watered, etc. I promise. As a girl that grew up on the coast, my dad loved that San Augustine grass. I get it. But this is what you're leaning in, and this is what we're talking about with respect to conservation. So I find this slide incredibly powerful because we're doing our part, but you're doing yours too. Okay, don't worry. Again, we're not going to talk about all this, but I hear a lot of questions about, are y'all even paying attention? Yes, we're paying attention 10 ways to Sunday, essentially. And by that, I mean, you will see system delivery. We are tracking how much water is coming into those surface water plants, how much we're cleaning it, how much is going out, how much are we getting from every well every week. And I want to know, why is this well not producing the same amount? What can we do to get more out of this well? Do we need to rehab this well? I do have, concerns when it's like the best way to get more out of this other well is to close this well because of proximity. But I wanted y'all to know that we take this very seriously. My number one mission is to make sure that you all have reliable, safe drinking water. So and you'll see again, it's the same three. I will argue that there is actually one other way for water supply we'll talk about in a second, and it has to do with infrastructure. But the water availability report, I've said this before, it is aptly named the WAR report. So every 5 years, we work with the county and others to look out, just as you've heard, we don't just plan for tomorrow or for next year, out 20 years and say, okay, what is the state of play now based on growth projections, which admittedly, I think you all know, have exceeded what some folks thought there would be. How much water is there? What can we do with it? How much are customers going to use? What is going to be the situation? It changes on us sometimes. I don't think that anyone thought that the lake would be at the level that it's in, but you have to plan for that. It's nice when there's upside, but that's not, you don't plan for the upside, right? You plan for the normal. So this is one of the things we will actually be completing this year's water availability report. By the end of this year, we'll be providing it to the county, and it involves a lot of folks that have a ton of degrees in this kind of thing. But I will also tell you one thing that I recognize we missed, and we're working on it this time, is our customers know a ton. Y'all know a ton about this lake. You know a ton about how much water there is and where it comes from, etc. So we actually have created 2 committees. One is a Conservation Advisory Council, I think, something like that. And we have a variety of folks involved in it, including the county commissioners and some of the community, as well as groundwater conservation representatives, et cetera, to have a say on, hey, you need to think about it like this. And so that's been a big part of what we have incorporated into the next draft of the water availability report, because it doesn't do us any good to think there's going to be water and be wrong. That's not something that I want for any of us. So it's critically important that we make these facts, that we make fact-based decisions. Similarly, we've created a customer advisory council for those that maybe have other opinions about things outside of conservation. It does matter too. So we are starting somewhere, and we're starting with folks that know how to do these things, and your input matters. So I want to say that this, to me, while maybe a tad bit intimidating, looking out to this crowd of folks that have passion for water and conservation is just fantastic to see. So this is what's going on. If you wonder, in addition to the reports previously, how we plan for water, this is just one of the ways, is the water availability report. But I'm not waiting to plan on water once every 5 years. All right, our DCP. So one thing, we all have different drought contingency plans. I can't exactly explain to you why that is, honestly, but I know that we do. So Another thing that I'd probably take a moment to explain is, again, us being in stage 4 for Texas Water, no benefit to me as a utility person at all. However, when we move stages, it's based on data. What level is the state well at? The GBRA, have they hit something that's then required us to curb our usage and the amount of allocation? So there are very methodical triggers that have to be hit as we move to certain drought stages. I know you're in stage 4 exhaustion. I will tell you, I don't see a scenario. I will tell you that never did I think that in January, remember that slide previously, it was July of 23. 23 was high, 24 is when I declared stage 4 based on the data. But here we are, we got to come out of it briefly in October of last year. If I could show y'all embraced that. And we had a spike. I have to admit that I thought this will be terrible if I now have to turn around because of the excessive usage. I appreciate the excitement about it, but y'all's usage makes such a difference in how much water there is, and it's primarily irrigation. It is primarily irrigation. A huge, huge amount of the water is irrigation. I know I'm not winning any popularity contest saying that, but I am going to tell you the facts. So as a result of the declining lake levels, imagine in January, as you all know, we had to declare stage 4. It's not even hot yet, right? The evaporation and some of the other things haven't even come into play yet. But this is how we declare certain stages. It's not arbitrary. It is not a valuable decision for us. The truth is, there's no benefit to a water utility for you using less if you think about it from a financial perspective. So I'd ask you to think about that. Okay. And I promise I realize you guys want to ask questions, and I certainly want to answer them. So conservation takes all of us. I say this because we get the question a lot. That's great. You're putting all of the responsibility on us. What are you doing, right? So here's some things that we're doing. So we have advanced leak detection. We're investing in low-flow toilets at our facilities. This is right outside of our facility, rain harvesting, our rain barrel as well, HVAC, condensate, eliminating bulk haulers. So that also happened last summer. For those of you that don't know, a bulk hauler is a private entity that essentially can hook up to the system and take the water and then take it somewhere else to customers that aren't you. Well, if there's plenty of water, I'm not in the business of trying to not let people have water, but I am in the business of making sure that my customers are taken care of first. And those bulk haulers were entities that weren't serving my customers, you guys. So that's an action that we took. Was it a popular one for some of those entities? No. And again, I don't have an issue with those entities, but I have a responsibility to my customers first. So that was a big thing. Declaring stage 4, yes, I did that. Yes, that takes something for you guys to lean into as well, but I wanted you to know that we are trying to do our part as well. I'm not asking you to do your part. Water efficient fixtures, you name it. For those of you that don't know, when you see a vehicle that's clean, that's not because we're hooking up. We actually recycle water at the facility that we wash our vehicles at. So also, what's something we did, I promise I have a slide on the developer situation. The one thing that I would implore you to consider is I do realize that every drop that hits the ground is one less drop for you to use. So that is not lost on me at all. Having said that, for water quality, there are times in which we have to flush the system. It's just like you think it would otherwise be with anything that might be stagnant. We have been very mindful of where we flush and when we flush. And it is helpful. Sometimes there is a leak. Thank you all for reporting them. But there are times that we have to flush a system. We are actually looking at investing in a truck that will recycle the water that we are flushing. It's a little bit easier said than done, but because they have to be customized, I think that's a good use of our dollars, and so that's something we're going to do. I do not get any joy whatsoever out of having to flush, and if there was somewhere that I could put it other than where we do, I would, but remember, part of flushing is for water quality. So there is that. Another thing that we're doing is think about effluent. We heard a little bit about wastewater. Right now, and I grew up here too, I always took pride in saying that I drank out of the hose as a kid, right? But, and maybe when there's plenty of water, you should take pride in that. But the truth is that when you're irrigating, that's water that you're putting on the ground that you could also, or one of your neighbors could drink. So we have to start this dialogue with using other sources of water that aren't potable, but for things where you don't have to drink that water. I know that is a major shift in mindset, but we have to start having the dialogue. So I'm gonna start it here. I know we're a long way from purple pipes, etc., but there's only so many sources of water. That is one. For those of you that are interested in wastewater, it actually comes with a lot of water. So there are alternatives out there. We're looking at them where we can to make sure that you continue to have the water that you need to drink. Okay, so back to my comment about strengthening supply. So yes, there's surface water, which comes from the sky. There's groundwater that comes from the ground. And then there's infrastructure. That's what I was talking about before. A leaky pipe, a leaky storage tank, a leaky toilet, a leaky sink, you name it, you would be amazed at the amount of water that's wasted by a leak. Depends on what the asset is as to how much it is. But we have to invest in our infrastructure, and we'd ask you to invest in your infrastructure too. There is a significant amount of water. We measure it. Some folks call it water loss. Some folks call it non-revenue water. Whatever it is, it's the water that's not being counted at the meter. We take that very seriously, and that's why we have focused on figuring out ways to spend infrastructure dollars, because the other two, I'm doing my best, and I'm not getting terribly far, so this is one of the places. So you see some construction. That doesn't necessarily mean it's development. Sorry, these right here. So we're upgrading pipes. So sometimes the construction is actually tied to improvements to make the system more resilient. I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about that, so I thought I'd mention that. Similarly, the very top picture there, what are we doing in the lake if we're not taking more water? We are extending the intake. We have had to extend the intake. We have 2 plants essentially for surface water, one on the south side and one on the north side. Park Shores and Triple Peak is what they are referred to. Both of them, we have had to extend the intake, which means go further into the lake to get the same amount of water out. You would be amazed at the new developments that we've learned about water quality as a result, but that's what we're doing. We're not getting any more. We're having to spend money to get the same amount because we have to go so much further out to get it. We are looking at having to have our second intake extension because what we already extended based on the speed in which the lake was dropping, you want to have a sort of a safety zone above your intake, and it has dissipated at a rate greater than we expected. So that's what's going on in the lake. So you can either strengthen supply or you can find more of it. I promise you, I am a water hunter. Almost every report where there's somewhere water related, I'm looking at it. Water comes down to a couple of things. One of them is availability. The other is there's quantity and quality. You have to have reliable quantity. I cannot build something or allow something based on the fact that it is there today and gone tomorrow. Similarly, treating quality costs money, and there's a point in which it doesn't make sense. So those are 2 big factors when you think about additional supply. But, so what do we have? You'll probably have seen again, we have a KT water project that's providing additional 6,000 acre feet. That is groundwater. So that's where that's coming from. Those wells are in Comal County. That was something that we actually acquired a few years ago. And to the comment about how long it takes, I think we closed on that deal almost 2 years ago, and it won't be ready to provide supply until the end of 26. That is water supply to strengthen the existing system. That is not water supply that we plan to provide to the developers. That is water supply for y'all. Water secure, you heard GBRA talk about it. To say that I am active in every one of those conversations would probably be to put it mildly. That is a priority for us. And I want as much water and to participate with GBRA, who's been a great partner, as possible to ensure that I can continue to provide a resilient system. Supply planning, I think the next slide is the infamous slide, and then diversification. I will tell you that right now, all of our water is from the Trinity Aquifer. We are not as diversified as a couple of other entities. So why is MBU in stage X and you are in stage Y? The answer is they have a different supply mix than I do. Ultimately, yes, they still have surface. They have the same, it either comes from the sky or it comes from the ground, but the sources by which they come from. I obviously don't work for them, so I won't speak on that, but that is the short answer, is that they have a more diversified supply of sources of water. So that is, their situation is different than TWC. There is no other answer than that. Focus on customers. Okay, so this is what made me a social media star unexpectedly. So thank you all for your support. My kids even I tried to tell them I was TikTok famous, but it didn't quite resonate. And I only say this because, admittedly, the overwhelming support from the community for this was fantastic. So you had a voice, you used it, thank you. We had a voice, we used it, and so we appreciate how receptive you were to that. That does not mean that I have any ill will to the development community. What it means is that I have an obligation to focus on the existing customers first and to ensure that I have a resilient system to provide water to you. So that's what we did. I get asked all the time by developers and customers, okay, so when? I don't know when. It's as good of a question probably as asking when the lake is going to be full. But I can tell you when. Only when we have adequate supply to ensure that we have provided reliable, quality water to our existing customers. It does me no good to sign up to support development. They have a sale one time. You guys are my customers forever. And it does not feel good when you are unhappy. And that's not my objective. I do realize that. There is definitely a crux there. So for now, and until I don't know when, that's what we will be. So it is a pause, but it is a pause until there is a reliable means for, remember, quantity and quality water. Water secure, it's a long way out. I don't know if there's another solution before then. Again, I promise you I'm a water hunter, so I look at lots of opportunities. And most of them fail one of those hurdle rates. They're either not reliable, or there's not good quantity, or there's not good quality. One Water, this is just something I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that you guys were aware of. That's something that we are a participant in, and so this is actually technically a national platform, but that we participate in, which is really that all water has value. As I probably don't have to tell this crowd, but every single way that you can reuse every single drop is the philosophy behind this. And we have partnered with One Water to show our commitment to this. They've been very helpful in us having some additional ideas of how we can make the most of the water that we have. And that's the team. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to all of you.
All right, friends. So obviously I want to acknowledge the fact that their presentations were wonderful. They were in depth. They had a lot of information to provide. We clearly don't have a lot of time for questions right now, but I want to make a commitment to you that I will look at every single one of these cards and I will put that out there. I'll put that information out there. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first couple of questions. I think we're going to get 1, 2, maybe 3. Okay, I got 3 questions on 1 card. Man, you guys got a lot of stuff. So I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to go with that. So first question for Nathan. Does GBRA agree with the amount of water being permitted out by TCEQ? Why or why not? Oh, it might not be live.
I can give this a try. So the question that was asked was, does GBRA agree with the TCEQ permitting system? And I think the simple answer would be yes. We've got to have a regulatory authority that oversees it and that looks at it from a large, big perspective, whether that's a basin or the statewide. Some of you probably already know, but the Guadalupe River Basin is fully allocated from TCEQ, meaning there's no more permits being issued for use from the Guadalupe River, so there's no new ones being issued, and we're all using the ones that we have. So overall, it is a fairly good system, and it is working right now. If you didn't have that system, it would be a free-for-all.
Thank you. All right, our next question. Years ago, the TAP LVE fees were much lower in some cases, as low as $2,000 per, am I getting that wrong, LUE? Got it. As of a week ago, the LUE fee was increased to $18,025 per LUE. 15 is TWC using the drought as cover to increase the LUE tap fees. Did your parent company do the same thing in California?
Okay, nobody panic. So I appreciate the question. So it's LUE fees. For those of you that don't know, LUE, living unit equivalent. It's a way in which we measure sort of a water user. The LUE fees are not tap fees that are charged to customers. The LUE fees are fees that are charged to a developer. So for as part of when we look at a development and we say, okay, how many LUEs, how many living unit equivalents will you need? And they have to pay that amount. Just one correction here, just for the facts here. So those fees are not tap fees. The LUE fee is a fee that the developer has to pay. It was, this person's right, it was about $2,300 about 18 months ago. It is currently in a little over $18,000. There was an increase in between there. That's fine that you weren't, that you may not know that. But the reason that this is important is because I get this question often about the existing customers having to subsidize the developers. That's exactly what these LUE fees are avoiding, is the developers have to pay for the new infrastructure. The LUE fee is only a portion of what a developer pays. They actually typically pay for other things. You might see an elevated storage tank. So the developers contribute. It's called contribution in native construction. They contribute to help ensure that that development, that they're paying for the infrastructure there as well, that it's not the existing customers. That's a way that you manage that. That's pretty common in the utility space, but that's not a tap fee. And so that's what the whole objective of that is. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the next one goes to Nathan. And when you sell water out of the lake, where does the money go? And there are 2 bullets that go with it. Money should be placed in a trust, use it when needed. And the water is very important for the lake. No more subdivisions, exclamation point.
I don't think the last bullet was a question.
That's
so
right.
I'll leave that one there. The simple answer is the fees that GBRA collects for water that's contracted out of Canyon Lake goes to pay for our operations, pays for our staff, pays for the upkeep of infrastructure, pays for future planning that we're doing. So the money goes right back into GBRA. I've mentioned up front, we don't collect taxes, we don't get state fees. So that's what all that money goes to, is our operation. And we're not about making a bunch of money. So we do have a reserve. So I think one of those bullet points was about a trust or something like that. Not sure those are exactly the same, but we do have a reserve. It's there for hard times. It's there also for when our board decides that there's a capital project that we need to make an investment in. So there's money there that we can use either as a down payment or to pay for that outright.
Thank you. So I got one more question, and I know Nikki needs us out of here by 7:30. So my commitment to you is this. I will take these questions with me, and I will find their answers, and I will post them on our social media page for Comal Conservation. So I encourage you to go on Facebook, become a friend of our Comal Conservation page, and all of these questions, I'll answer them as quickly as I can. So this
Ryan, I'm going to cut you off, and I can't help you but to say we will help you do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I would assume the table will.
We're going to
will
get
help
these
you.
questions answered. So definitely know that we're not trying to just get out of here. This one was actually handed to me while I was coming up to the stage earlier. So who should I call to request a visit to my property? I live alone with no pool, garden, flower beds, and this month's bill was $330. They also listed their information on the card.
Mike, I'm guessing that's me. Just some folks may not be TWC customers, so they provided their information. If you'll provide it to me, then I will make sure. My supposition is that there is a leak. We have a couple of innovative technologies, including WaterSmart and other things that are designed to help y'all know if you have a leak so that you can avoid this exact situation. But similar to GBRA, whether it's this card or others, you have my commitment to answer your questions because it's been fantastic to show the interest that you have in your water.
Thank you. All right, folks, we've got just a little bit of time left. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists. I also, because we're so grateful for them, we got them tote bags, Comal Conservation tote bags, and it comes with the Comal Conservation bandana and the 4 new stickers we came out with for Earth Day. So thank you all for being here. Again, one more round of applause for all of you for being here tonight. Thank you.